Welcome to Our Special Lives. I'm Laura McGrath, and today we're concluding our 4-part series on dealing with difficult emotions. Today, we're once again joined by Coach Kari Ann Atkinson, and we're going to talk about some ways that people try to cope with difficult emotions, which are not very productive. Kari Ann is going to walk us through what this looks like and how you can make changes so that you can deal with difficult emotions without creating additional problems. And before we get started, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share. Hi, Kari Ann. Welcome to Our Special Lives.
Hi, Laura. Thank you for having me again.
Of course. This series has been so fantastic. And so for the last part of the series, what I thought we could discuss was how people often deal with these difficult emotions in ways that are really unproductive. And, what I'd like to talk about today is things that people use to avoid feeling these emotions. We've just spent 3 episodes talking about these difficult emotions and how we can process them. Today, I want to talk about kind of some habits that people get in lieu of processing emotions that really can be anywhere from unproductive to destructive.
So first of all, you're exactly correct in the idea that people get into these habits in order to avoid, because we have 3 different ways that we can deal with an emotion. We can avoid it, we can resist it, or we can allow it. And so most of us don't even realize that we are avoiding or resisting an emotion by the habits that we are continuing to do. So one of the first things that you want to do, if this is like piquing your interest, is look at what are some of the habits you're doing when you start to feel uncomfortable. So some common examples would be, I'm starting to feel really sad or really angry or really frustrated. I don't want to, so I'm going to go in to the kitchen and I'm going to grab Oreos or the bag of Doritos, or maybe I'm just going to have a glass of Chardonnay, or pick up my phone and start scrolling through Instagram or social media, right? So basically, it's kind of anything that we do so that we don't have to face the emotion that we're currently feeling.
Mm-hmm. And I just want to interject, you may not even be aware that you're doing this. Like, yes. You may feel like, oh my gosh, I'm so frustrated. Like every afternoon at 5:00, I go into my pantry and I eat a ton of stuff that like, I really don't want to be eating and I just can't seem to help it. Or, at 6:00 at night, I just can't seem to help it. I open a bottle of wine and before I know it, the bottle of wine is gone. So the clue that you may be doing this is really asking yourself, am I engaging in behavior that I don't really want to be doing, but it seems like I can't help it? That I can't help it feeling is often a clue that you're using that behavior to escape feeling your emotions.
Absolutely. And one of the very first things that I tell my clients is to start actually, in order to start becoming aware of whether or not you're doing this, you need to start becoming aware. You say, okay, today I'm going to notice, when do I go into the kitchen to grab the bottle of wine or the bag of Doritos or whatever it happens to be? At what times am I picking up the phone? Right. And so you have to start noticing, is this a habit? Is this something you are doing every single day around the same time? Or maybe around the same episode. So maybe it's not the same time, but every time, meaning time of day, but every time your child starts to have a meltdown or, something else is going askew, you, instead of staying and really kind of processing and dealing with it, you leave the room and go do something else. So you leave the room and you go watch Netflix, or you grab the wine, or you grab the bag of Doritos. So you have to really start being intentional about paying attention to what habits we're doing and when, because that's a sign. We're not saying that eating Oreos is bad, or having a few chips or having a glass of wine is a bad thing. How you know if it's what we call in the coaching world, we call this buffering, because you're trying to buffer away or take away your emotions, is you're doing this when you're starting to get kind of like net negative results in your life. Meaning you're not actually processing this emotion. and you know you're not processing the emotion, if your emotion comes back, the same emotion day in and day out, day in and day out, because if you don't process it, it stays there. Mm-hmm. And then what happens? It grows bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And we all know what happens, right? Then there's the straw that broke the camel's back, and you like completely explode or melt down, right? Yeah. Which is what we're trying to avoid. And so just noticing, are these things getting in your way of processing an emotion? Do you wake up with shame the next day? Do you feel guilty after eating something or looking at something or drinking something? The next day, do you say, oh, I'm not going to do that tonight? And then tonight, you do it anyway. Those are usually the clues that you are using something else in place of processing an emotion.
Yeah, and our brains are so smart that if you do something a few times, if you feel sad and you eat a piece of cake, your brain is so good at drawing the connection between, oh, when I feel sad, I'm going to make myself feel better by eating something.
Yes.
And so after a while, if you use eating, for example, to buffer those emotions, then it becomes even more of a problem because now your brain has created a habit loop around it. Exactly. So it kind of compounds the problem.
Yeah. Every time you engage in something like that, your brain gets a little dopamine hit, right? It kind of gives you a sense of pleasure. Mm-hmm. But the truth of the matter is all of these things are false pleasures. They're not really bringing you pleasure. What they're doing is they're bringing you avoidance and distraction, right?
So it feels better in the moment, but ultimately, it's getting you in an actually worse place.
Exactly.
And then also you have the hangover, or you've been shopping online when you didn't want to, or you step on the scale and you're 2 pounds heavier. So you get this bad result in addition to this emotion that still has yet to be processed.
Right. And then what you've done now is you've compounded it, because now you have the original emotion that you were trying to avoid. But now we have this new negative kind of outcome or result of the behavior that we were using to avoid. So now we have a whole nother set of emotions around the new negative outcome. Right. So then you have more shame or guilt or frustration. And so then so now you have a choice. Are we going to continue to buffer, or are we going to allow the emotions and process it? Yeah.
So can you name, we've talked about a few of them, but can you name the ways that people buffer?
Yes. So the most common ways that people buffer would be using food, using alcohol, social media, Netflix. I've even had clients use cleaning, and people think like cleaning their house, and they're like, what? Cleaning your house is a good thing. Well, it's a good thing until it actually has and creates negative outcomes in your life, right? So when you become obsessed with cleaning, now what you're doing is you're creating more pressure for yourself and still avoiding emotion. And that's taking up all your thought time and all your thought processes, and you're not able to deal with your life. And so it can be work. It could be going out in the garage. A lot of my male clients, they will go in the garage and they just kind of escape there, right? So it's anything that you do to divert your attention. Exercise is another one that a lot of people, so it's the exact opposite of overeating. They over-exercise, and it's constant. And so when it becomes something that interferes with the rest of your life, with the rest of your day, with tomorrow, that's how you know it's buffering. And it's potentially something you need to look at.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say you're a person who is like, wow, this could actually apply to me because, I often find that I, have this behavior, let's just say around eating, at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And I think correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a lot of people commonly buffer in the evening because they've had a full day of experiences and circumstances and all of this stuff. So can we talk a little bit about sort of nighttime buffering?
Yes, nighttime buffering. Yes, you're exactly right. Because we get to the end of the day and we've had all these things happen, And then we feel frustrated, whatever the feeling, the negative feeling is that we don't want to feel. And we often tell ourselves, oh, I've earned it.
Mm-hmm.
It's been such a stressful day. I deserve this, handful of cookies or whatever food of your choice is, or the big bowl of ice cream. And so we are actually, what we do is we start to, we consider it a reward, when in reality, it's working against us. And so the first step is awareness, recognizing that you are doing this. The second step is to, before you grab whatever it is you're going to grab to make yourself feel better, give some thought to what it is you're feeling. Like, actually look at your day and go, okay, these are the things that happened in my day. This is my thought about my day, and this is how I'm feeling. And see if you can give yourself another half an hour before you indulge in whatever it is you're going to indulge in, to think about and process whatever it is that happened in your day and you're feeling. That's going to help you to start to process and not necessarily turn to that habitual food or drink or, activity to push that stuff away.
Yeah. I mean, I had an experience where, because my son was special needs, he's a nurse during the day. And when I would come home from work at night, let's say it was like 6:30 or 7:00 at night, the nurse would leave. And then oftentimes, because my husband travels for a living, I would be by myself caring for my son with significant special needs. And then also my other son, after I had already worked, I had been gone from the house for 12 hours. Right. And so what would happen, what I found myself doing, is I would walk in the house and I would start grabbing like handfuls of nuts and, other stuff that was laying around, and, probably consuming, 600 or 800 calories in the first 10 minutes that I was in the house.
Right.
And what I realized is that I was feeling overwhelmed when I was making that transition from coming home from work to what I like to call my second job, which was being a mom and taking care of the kids and, meeting all the needs, including of my special needs child. And I had gotten in this habit of avoiding feeling that overwhelmed feeling by, basically eating when I walked in the door.
Right.
And so then over time, I developed this habit, like walk in the door, eat the nuts, walk in the door, eat the nuts. And I had to get really clear about what I was doing and why I didn't want to do it and what I was avoiding. And ultimately, when I was able to identify that I was feeling overwhelmed, I was able to deal with that in a much more productive way, which was, of course, I feel overwhelmed. Like, who wouldn't feel overwhelmed in this situation?
Right.
And what am I going to do about it instead of buffering? And so, what's the solve for overwhelm? It's not eating nuts. Eating nuts doesn't help with feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I had to figure out, like, what could I do in that transition period that would help me feel less overwhelmed? And so I was able to get my son's nurse to stay for an extra 30 minutes. So I would come home, I would have time to change my clothes. And I had like a little like coming home ritual that I developed that would just kind of help me decompress a little bit before I had to go from work, to the second job. And doing that fixed everything, because I actually solved for my overwhelm, and then I didn't need to eat nuts.
Exactly.
So,
and I think you bring up a good point. So what I love about your example is the fact that once you've recognized it, right, you recognized you're overwhelmed, and instead of going for the nuts, you stopped and you questioned, because once we can actually allow the emotion and identify it and allow it, now we can problem solve.
Yeah.
But if you would have continued the next day and the next day and the next day to eat, that solution would have never happened.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that is a great point, that you have to stop and really assess what's really going on so that you can come up with other solutions to the actual problem. And for a lot of people, it is overwhelmed. For other people, it's a lot of frustration, sadness, whatever that emotion is that you're dealing with. Another thing that I love that you brought up, because this is one of the things that I was going to suggest, is start to replace habits. So you need to kind of identify habits that you have and start to replace old habits with new habits, maybe something that's a little bit more productive. So instead of grabbing the nuts, if I'm feeling sad or frustrated or overwhelmed, I sit down and I write out all of my feelings and all the crap that went on during the day. And you do a thought drop or a thought download. Mm-hmm. Just to kind of get it all out and look, now you've like started to process. Mm-hmm. Other strategies that people can do, and this is a big one, is using some type of a protocol. And so if you are really in a habit, like a legitimate habit, where it's just mindless, what you do then is you kind of reshape the habit by creating a protocol for yourself. So what that means is the day before, so what today's Tuesday. So if I created a protocol, it'd be, okay, so Wednesday, I will have the handful of nuts at 7:00 at night. So you purposefully plan when you're going to consume the social media or the wine or the Oreos or the nuts the day ahead. Mm-hmm. So you're not necessarily taking that away because if that's something you're enjoying, but you're deciding the day ahead when you're going to enjoy it. Now you're enjoying it because you want to enjoy it and you planned it. It's not out of reaction to your day. And there's a difference. There is a shift that occurs there.
Yeah, because one is happening with your higher brain. Mm-hmm. It's intentionally planned. Mm-hmm. And the other is happening in a reactive mode with your lower brain as a way to compensate for an emotion that you don't want to feel.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. So you're using your prefrontal cortex when you're planning ahead, right? And that's your higher brain. And so you are laying everything out. You're creating a strategy. And as long as you can continue to do that day in and day out and honor your commitment to yourself, it's going to help you reduce the buffering, start actually facing and addressing the things that you're going through so that you can also problem solve. And you're going to end up being happier and healthier in the end, as will your family.
So quick question for you, because I know this happens a lot. Let's say you're in the habit of having, a glass of wine when you come home from work, and then it ends up turning into like 3 or 4. Okay. Mm-hmm. And you do this exercise where you're like, okay, tomorrow I'm going to have 1 glass of wine when I come home, and then I'm stopping. But tomorrow comes and you feel almost like a compulsion to keep going. So what's going on there, and how do you start to sort that out?
What's going on there is what we call an urge, because an urge, I like to think of like the pesky little brother that like taps on your shoulder over and over and over again, wanting you to play, wanting you to come with them. And what happens is if we don't ignore it, so, you can ignore the urge, you ignore the brother, but he continues to tap, or you can give in, right? And go play with him. In other words, you can give in to the cookies or give in to the glass of wine, and then the second glass of wine, and then the third glass of wine. But then what happens is the next day he comes back tapping on your shoulder. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so as long as if we are trying to resist the urge, or we're trying to avoid the urge, or we give into it, it keeps coming back. So what you have to do when you feel that urge is you have to acknowledge, I'm feeling the urge. This is really what I want. You literally have to talk yourself through this though. Go, okay, well, this is what I want. I'm recognizing it. The worst thing that can happen is I'm feeling this urge and it's going to pass. Mm-hmm. Right? And so once you can acknowledge you're having the urge, and then you allow it there and you just talk yourself through it like, okay, it's an urge, it's going to pass. Eventually it passes, and eventually it gets easier and easier and easier to allow the urges and then to just let them pass.
Yeah. I mean, most people might not know that an urge, like an emotion, lasts about 90 seconds as a feeling in your body. Mm-hmm. And most people are so uncomfortable with even the idea of an urge or the idea of how hard it's going to be to resist an urge that oftentimes they just give in to the urge.
Right. Right.
And it's helpful to know, like, hey, this is 90 seconds. Like, you can do anything for 90 seconds. You can just sit there and let it play out in your body. You might feel a tightness in your chest. You might feel, some sort of feeling in your stomach, or your hands and feet might tingle. It might feel weird, but you can sit there with it, just like you can sit with sadness or frustration or anything else for 90 seconds. You can do it.
Exactly. And, a lot of us really enjoy rewards. So one of the things that I suggest to people who are struggling with this, if you're trying to reduce the buffering, when you're trying to avoid, doing those things that are causing negative results in your life, is to create like an urge jar. So you get marbles, and every time you have an urge, you allow it, but you don't give into it. You put a marble in the urge jar.
Mm-hmm.
Or I've had clients use lipstick on their mirror, and so they put hash marks on the mirror with lipstick, just to kind of show you that you are able to resist the urge. And what's really amazing is if you celebrate after it's done. Like I did this last night. I had a glass of wine. I wanted another one. I'm like, no, I'm not going to have another one. So I drank a glass of hot chocolate instead. So I kind of replaced it, but at least I'm replacing it with something a little more healthy, right? But I acknowledge that the urge came, and then it went. And then after the hot chocolate, I'm like, oh, I'm really glad I had the hot chocolate instead of the wine, because today I woke up and I feel great.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's kind of building new habits and building new thought processes. But what it really boils down to, and you said it earlier, is recognizing the worst thing that can happen is you experience a very intense emotion. That is the worst thing that can happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then it goes away. So once you allow it, you acknowledge it, you're like, I see you, Overwhelm. I got you. I know you're there. Right? And you process through it, and you might even problem solve for it. Then it goes away.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it happens to come back, because it's going to come back at some point, now you have a productive way of dealing with it.
Yeah. But
what we want to do is we want to pretend like it's not there. We want to avoid it. We want to run away from it. We want to resist it. Mm-hmm. And then it just makes us not enjoy our life.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you get the negative consequence, and then you're not actually problem solving and figuring out a way that you can make it better. Make the feeling better, whether, if it's sadness or overwhelm or frustration.
So, that's really what it comes down to. I know there was like a time with my daughter, the one with special needs, that she would be having a meltdown, and then I would be having a meltdown. It was just, and then there was a lot of buffering going on and in different ways. And it was exhausting, and it was day in and day out. And finally I just had to stop myself. This is before I even knew about coaching. And I had just made the decision that I'm going to figure out what to do about this. And so I just said, I'm going to leave the house. I'm going to go on a walk. I'm going to clear my head. I went on a walk. I cleared my head. And in that 30-minute walk that I had, I was able to problem solve for some of the things that were going on. Right. And so that's really what it comes down to, is how able are you to address the emotions, allow them, work through them, solve your problem, and then go on to the next day.
Yeah.
And I know it sounds easy. It's not easy.
Yeah, it's not easy, but it's worth it. And really anybody can do it.
Yeah.
So people should be not intimidated by trying this process and seeing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And really, when you get clear on what's going on, it helps you not do this out of willpower, because what happens is people say, well, I'm not going to eat that bag of Oreos or that bowl of ice cream or the glass of wine. And now, like you said, you come to it and you have the urge, and now you're using your willpower to not, indulge in it. Where what would it look like in your life if you no longer had to use willpower? What if the desire for that was gone because you knew that you could handle whatever was coming your way? That's a game changer.
Oh, huge, because willpower requires a huge expenditure of emotional energy in and of itself. And so that's why people wonder, like, oh, why can't I ever stick to my diet? I always gain the weight back. It's because when you're using willpower over and over and over again, eventually it runs out, because you're emotionally exhausted from always exerting the willpower.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one last point, and I'm bringing this up because I've dealt with this in the last 2 weeks. This has come up a lot with the people that I've been working with, is the idea of overwhelm. And I know we've already talked about overwhelm, but I really encourage you, when you're feeling overwhelmed, to look at the reasons why. And a lot of those have to do with expectations.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're able to, when you walk into the kitchen and you want to grab the ice cream, maybe you have a piece of paper there, or you have something there to take notes on, and you write down, why am I feeling the way that I'm feeling? And look at how many of those are expectations that you have that maybe you don't need.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, that mind shift can even completely take away the urge to consume whatever it is you want to consume.
Yeah.
So that's really addressing the problem.
Yeah, that's a great tip. The other thing that I think a lot of parents in general feel, and I feel like this is an emotion, even though it might not technically be an emotion, is being tired. And wanting to kind of buffer from feeling tired.
Yeah. Or emotionally tired.
Emotionally tired and physically tired.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like the kind of end of the day stuff that also plays in, because we're also tired from our day, and we've still got a long stretch in front of us before the children are asleep.
Mm-hmm.
If your child can even sleep, which is like another whole thing.
Right.
And it's being tired, and then either eating food or drinking to try to wake up.
Right. But it actually does the exact opposite.
Yes.
It makes you more tired.
Yeah.
Right.
It does. So if people are feeling tired and they've noticed that they're buffering because they're feeling tired, do you have any thoughts on, what they could do instead, or kind of how to solve for that? Like, have any of your clients figured out a way to deal with that?
Yes. So what I actually discovered is, if you can create, even if it's just 15 minutes, maybe you can only squeeze in 10. 30 minutes is the goal here. But you get that place where you're tired, and if you're into this kind of thing, I used to not be, but now I'm loving it, is the guided meditation.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look up on your phone a guided meditation for relaxation,
there's tons on YouTube.
There's tons. If you just are able to get into a quiet space, if that's possible, put in AirPods or headphones, whatever, and you do a guided meditation for 10 minutes minimum, right? 10 minutes, you would be amazed. And you just really focus on that, and you allow yourself to just be in that. It will bring you back energy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like a little reset. It really kind of centers you and helps you go on for the last, part of the day, and gives you that second wind for that last part of the day.
Yeah, that's a great tip.
Yeah.
The other thing that I've noticed is that a lot of people at the end of the day, when when the kids are down, and they might have that time to themselves, there's like a lot of almost buffering with TV, Netflix, social media. Yeah. And people end up staying up. They don't want that time to end. It's just the time of the day when they feel that they can relax. They don't have to feel all these emotions and all this stuff. Right. And then they end up staying up until 11:30, midnight. Mm-hmm. And then they're only getting 5.5, 6 hours of sleep. Yeah. So can we talk about that for a minute?
Yeah. So that brings up this idea of sleep hygiene, because if you don't have good sleep hygiene, now you're tired. You wake up tired, which then just starts your day off tired and exhausted already. So you're, mm-hmm. Talk about net negative results right there. So you can do the same thing with the Netflix, with the social media, as you do with the other, like the food and the beverages, is do a protocol. I'm going to watch this show tomorrow night from 9 to 10. Then at 10, it's going to go off. And then I'm going to meditate, or I'm going to read for a half an hour, like whatever, and really actually start to develop a good nighttime routine. And you commit to yourself lights out by whatever time. Yeah. Like I personally, and we all have a certain time that we know we do better when we go to bed.
Yeah.
Right. Mine's like 10 o'clock. If I go to bed after 10 o'clock, I know I'm going to be tired the next day.
Yeah.
So that means that I might not get to watch 2 Netflix shows back to back. I only get to watch one. Right.
Yeah.
And so you have to make that commitment to yourself. And it doesn't take very long for you to put this into place and for you to really start seeing how it benefits your life. And pretty soon you look forward to actually going to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're going to sleep and your mind is able to unwind and you wake up refreshed, which helps your day, which helps you then at night not feel so exhausted.
Exactly. And when you're not tired, it all interrelates. And when you're not as tired at the end of the day, you're probably not going to get as many urges to buffer.
Exactly. You know, and something else that I like to suggest is, first of all, try to come up with 30 minutes a day that you're doing something for yourself. And I know some people watching this might be like, well, that's ridiculous. There is no way. There is a way. You just need to figure it out, right? And so what we do is we use the buffering. What if you weren't buffering? What if you were doing something different for yourself during that time?
Yeah, it takes time to eat. It takes time to drink. It takes time to watch Netflix. So
exactly. That's one of the things I hear the most often with clients that stop over drinking is how much time they have on their hands.
Yeah.
Like, I had no idea I had so much time. You don't realize how much time all that stuff takes until you're not doing it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so if you can dedicate 30 minutes to yourself every day, and that gives you something to look forward to, that is a positive thing in your life, not creating something negative, that too will help you not need to, you know, use so much Netflix or use so much social media at the end of the day to unwind.
Mm-hmm.
Just helps you look forward to your day more. And all of this stuff literally is like a domino effect. So once you start making one change, it changes all these other things in your life. And at the end of, say, a month, your month is completely different than the month before.
Yeah.
And that's what's so wonderful. It happens pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I plan all of my food for the following day ahead of time.
Yeah.
And what that does is it just eliminates it eliminates kind of mindless eating, which is actually never mindless. It's always, to kind of compensate for something. And I'm not saying I never have urges to
sure,
eat a brownie or whatever, but like I already know what my past self has planned for my current self.
Right.
With all of the good intention in mind in terms of, what's something healthy that I can eat and what's going to serve my goals and make me feel the best. And, so when that urge comes up, it's easier to say, no, thanks. Because, I'm not doing that right now because I'm going to have dinner in 2 hours and I don't need the brownie.
Right.
So,
right.
So planning is, like you say, it really is a game changer.
And your future self will thank you, right? Yes. Like you just talked about, like your past self, your present self. So every time, say, you make a plan and you stick to it, and even if you don't want to stick to it, but you stick to it anyway, you can tell yourself, my future self is going to thank me. And let me tell you, she does.
Yes.
Right. Tomorrow when you wake up, she thanks you.
Yeah.
And that usually helps people. And that brings them something else is when you plan ahead, I call them day ahead decisions. When you make day ahead decisions, it actually frees up your mind because decisions, you have no idea how much of your brain your mind is going toward making little teeny tiny decisions throughout your day. What are we going to have for dinner? What do I need from the grocery store? What? So if you make the day ahead decisions, that gives you more free time. Because people will also shy away from free time because if they have free time, now they have to deal with their life. Right. And so having free time is a little bit of a double-edged sword, but once you can start processing and facing your life and dealing with it, you can start improving it and problem solving, which now you don't want to avoid your life. You don't want to avoid free time because you're actually enjoying your life.
Well, this has been wonderful. What a great overview of buffering and how we can deal with our emotions more productively and start identifying how we try to escape in all these different ways.
Yeah. So I think like as we leave, just as a real quick reminder, one, start paying attention to what you're going to, are you going to food? Are you going to social media? Are you cleaning? Are you exercising? Are you consuming alcohol? When are you doing those things? And next time you go in to do them, stop and ask yourself, okay, what am I feeling in this moment? Am I really hungry? Am I really thirsty? Right? Like, what's really going on? And just kind of see what's really going on. And now you can make the conscious decision of what you want to do about that. Do you want to try and let this urge pass? Or do you want to deal with the emotions and start problem solving?
And use the day ahead planning.
And use the day ahead planning. Exactly.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Well, Kari Ann, if people want to learn more about you, how can they do that?
They can go to my website, karilifecoaching.com. They can also email me, Kari Ann at karilifecoaching.com, and that's Kari with a K. And I believe all that will also be in your show notes. Yeah. And like I've said before, if you reference our special lives, then you can have a free coaching session. You'd be amazed at what one coaching session can do for your day. Yep.
Well, thank you so much. This has been fantastic. You've given us so much to think about, and we really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.